Order in the court. Be seated.
It's time for Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt. Todd Marquardt, attorney at law in Texas. If you're a millionaire or a thousandaire, Talk Law Radio is now on the air. Call in with your business law question, your elder law question, veteran aid, Medicaid, build a business to get paid. 210-308-8867. Or ask a question online at marquardtlawfirm.com. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com. And now it's Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt.
Now it's time to discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. I'm Todd Marquardt with Talk Law Radio, and today we're going to be talking about firearms at the fair. Now, whenever we talk about firearms, I know it's a controversial issue, and we want to educate you in a professional manner, and sometimes that includes controversial subjects. And I try to be sensitive to everybody's opinion. I respect your right to free speech, your right to peacefully assemble, and I ask for you to return the favor and respect my right under the Constitution to discuss this topic as well. If you disagree with something you hear that I say, it's okay to comment on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, as long as it's not discourteous. Comments with foul language, insults, or threats will be banned. And I'm sorry that some people have suffered from shots, from getting injured, from being killed. I'm sorry about that, but there are more law-abiding citizens possessing firearms than there are criminals possessing firearms. So I want to talk about firearms at the fair. You've probably heard about this in the news lately. Because I'm licensed to practice law by the State Bar of Texas, and the State Bar wants attorneys to talk about the law. Legal advice has to be tailored to the specific circumstances of each case, and laws are ever changing, so material discussed in this program is meant for general informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Marquardt Law Firm sponsors our show, and attorneys at Marquardt Law Firm focus on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans. Also, new businesses and old businesses which might have issues with corporations, contracts, LLCs, family limited partnerships, and we can represent those who are facing problems from lack of planning, like in district court, county court, or probate court. Before we get started talking about the law, I'd like to say a prayer. Dear God, thank you for this day, and thank you for all the gifts and blessings that you give to us. Please forgive us for our sins, for our mistakes, for doing the wrong thing, or failing to follow your will. Please help me give good information to the listeners about firearms at the fair today. Help us to use the gifts and talents you have provided for the good of your people, for our own good, and for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so you probably heard in the news that the Texas State Fair has a new policy on weapons. It says, as a private, not-for-profit organization, the State Fair of Texas prohibits fairgoers from carrying all firearms, knives that are prohibited according to state law, clubs, explosive devices, ammunition, chemical dispensing devices, replicas or hoaxes, or any weapons of any kind. This includes holders of license to carry, constitutional carry, concealed carry, and the open carry of firearms anywhere on the fairgrounds, including Cotton Bowl Stadium. So the governor issued a letter that says, we, the undersigned, this is signed by a bunch of state representatives. I thought it was from the governor, but I guess it's from all these state representatives. So sorry about that. It says, to the State Fair of Texas Board of Directors, we, the undersigned, write to you today encouraging you to rescind your policy which bans law-abiding citizens from carrying firearms at the State Fair of Texas. While it may be that your new policy placates some, the result will make your patrons less safe. We bring to your attention a few key statistics to support this position. 82% of mass public shootings since 1998 and 94% since 1950 have occurred in places where guns are banned. That's a statistic provided by crimeresearch.org. Armed civilians have stopped attacks in 35% of mass shootings in gun-free zones. When you exclude gun-free zones from the statistic, the number balloons to over 51% of mass shootings were stopped by an armed civilian. Gun-free zones are magnets for crime because they present less of a threat to those who seek to do evil. Law-abiding citizens in the United States use firearms daily to defend themselves against criminals. Recent tragedies have demonstrated the sad reality that you can die while waiting on law enforcement to save your life. Those who choose to assume responsibility for their own safety understand this harsh reality. So what do you think about this? Do you think that firearms should be allowed at the fair? Do you worry about people possessing firearms when you're going to an event? Email me at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOST@talklawradio.com, and tell me how you feel. And then you can weigh in on this. Ken Paxton also sent a letter to, well, this is to the interim city manager, Kimberly Tolbert, City of Dallas. Ken Paxton is the Attorney General for the state of Texas. He says, Dear Ms. Tolbert, Texas Government Code Section 411.209A states that a political subdivision of the state may not take any action, including an action consisting of the provision of notice by communication described by Section 30.06 or 3.30.07 Penal Code that states or implies that a license holder who is carrying a handgun under the authority of this subchapter is prohibited from entering or remaining on a premises or other place owned or leased by the governmental entity unless license holders are prohibited from carrying a handgun on the premises or any other place by Section 46.03 Penal Code or other law. Regarding Fair Park, owned by the City of Dallas, our office recognizes that the Cotton Bowl and other buildings or premises located within or on Fair Park that would be used for a high school, collegiate, professional sporting, or interscholastic events would be premises where weapons are prohibited. Texas Penal Code Section 46.038. However, the entirety or vast majority of the 277-acre Fair Park in Dallas is not a place where weapons are prohibited under Texas Penal Code Section 46.03. The city's letter to our office, dated February 21st, 2023, states that the State Fair of Texas, a nonprofit organization, operates the annual State Fair of Texas at Fair Park in Dallas. It is our understanding that through City Council Resolution 022405, approved August 28, 2002, the current Fair Park lease agreement became effective January 1, 2003, by which the City of Dallas and the State Fair of Texas entered into a 25-year lease to expire December 31, 2027. So, in general, the state fair claims to be a private, not-for-profit, and they can make rules about prohibiting firearms if they want to. But what Attorney General Ken Paxton is saying is that even if that were the case, they're not allowed to prohibit firearms on public property, which is what they were saying here, that Fair Park is owned by the city of Dallas. Okay, another notice came out by the National Rifle Association, and what's notable about this is just that they're asking their members to please contact the state fair via phone number at 469-945-FAIR or email info@bigtex.com to let them know you disagree with their no firearms policy because gun-free zones don't make Texans any safer. What do you think? Comment on our Facebook page, Talk Law Radio Facebook, or our YouTube page, or Twitter/X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find Talk Law Radio there as well, and leave a comment saying whether you think firearms should be allowed at the fair or not. Now, this issue came to light after last year there was a shooting at the state fair. 3 people were wounded. A gun was recovered from the scene. Dallas police arrested 22-year-old Cameron Turner, who was charged with aggravated assault because he allegedly shot 2 men and a woman inside the Tower Building food court. An arrest affidavit said that the video showed him, the alleged shooter, Cameron Turner, was approached by a man, and Turner told police he felt threatened and went into survival mode and opened fire 3 or 4 times. The shots hit the man and 2 others. Turner told the police he was trying to protect his family. So, if you were at the state fair and that happened and you were nearby, I'm sure you'd be scared to death. Any person would. But I was not able to find any resolution to this matter to find out whether he was found to have acted in self-defense or whether he was found to be guilty of that crime. So in the United States, you know, as well as I do, that people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So we'll just say that he was alleged to have committed a crime. Now, recently in San Antonio, we had Fiesta. That was back in April, and you might remember hearing in the news about a shooting at one of the Fiesta events at Market Square on April 28th. The suspects were Mikey Valdez and Albert Cisneros. 2 people died and 5 others were injured. Police said that 2 officers saw Valdez fire a handgun at Cisneros. Officers returned fire, striking Valdez several times. He died at the scene. It was unclear what role Cisneros played. He was transported to a nearby hospital where he was later pronounced dead. So if you were in San Antonio at a Fiesta event and shots were fired, I'm sure you would be frightened. I would as well. But does that negate the rights of other law-abiding citizens to possess and carry their firearms? Well, I polled some of the people in my inner circle, and here are some of the comments. My question was, do you think people should be able to carry a firearm at the state fair? 82% of shootings have happened in places where firearms are banned. One of my buddies said, that's a good question. yeah, the whole gun-free zones, criminals don't care, and you're just disarming the law-abiding innocents. Well, and my response was, well, what if alcohol is being served? And he said, yeah, that's the only factor I agree with. Either no carrying where alcohol is served or have very strict penalties for carrying and drinking. It's a hard balance because the criminals don't care. Another comment was, I'm big into the right to bear arms. It's so sad so many people are irresponsible with it, but it's a founding principle of our country. And I want to mention that one of my friends, when I mentioned this statistic of 82% of shootings happen in places where firearms are banned, he challenged that statistic. This is a long comment that I'm going to read, so bear with me. No, I believe they should be banned just like the San Antonio, Houston, and Austin rodeos and most other festivals. Regardless of being on public land, it's still a private entity and can ban what it wants. Banning guns wouldn't make it less safe since there are already 200 officers on patrol at the park, with any current or retired law enforcement enjoying the festival also being allowed to carry, and a police substation at the foot of the park. Why risk it when it is commonly banned routinely at festivals, concerts, and rodeos all over Texas, especially since they are coming off a shooting at the food court last year? That's what I just mentioned. Here's the challenge to the statistic. The 82% stat is really tricky, though. I've seen it in a couple of articles, but apparently it was based on a study by a gun advocacy group that detailed gun violence from 1950 to 2018. And it's interesting that this gentleman calls it a gun advocacy group because on this website where I found this statistic that was quoted by the letter from the representatives of the state of Texas, said that there were other statistics that were reported by government from a source that they call a gun control group. So we have statistics by a gun control group and we have statistics by a gun advocacy group. And so you have to really look at the data and decide for yourself. And so he cites some other statistics, but he did not provide me the source of those statistics. So I'm not going to mention those there. I'm just going to say that there's a dispute over whether that's an accurate statistic or not. But the question to you is, do you think that firearms should be at the fair? Do you feel more safe knowing that any person around you could be carrying a firearm in their pocket? Or do you feel less safe? Let me know. Email me at host@talklawradio.com or post a comment on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, or anywhere where Talk Law Radio can be found. Here's another comment. I think that's a tough argument. Part of me says it's kind of like a bar, prohibited area. Other half says that if you have armed cops or security, then the people should be able to arm and defend themselves as well. I like to argue that people who want to carry weapons will always carry, no matter what, good guys or bad guys. I think I have a couple more. One person I asked, should firearms be at the fair? He just said yes. Another said, well, I know there are some opinions out there consistent with the idea that places where carrying is forbidden are easy targets for mass shootings. And then finally, often in government and business, do-gooders are anxious to respond to every mishap with a changing policy which keeps things in chaos. So, That's an interesting thing. And what I wanted to remind everyone everywhere is that we never know when something bad's going to happen to us. It might be from a shooter. It might be from a hurricane, a tornado. It might be from a fall. It might be from some other strange accident on some carnival ride. So I want to implore everyone to get your affairs in order. If you're going to the fair, it's going to be a dangerous place one way or the other. Whether you think you're going to be shot by a law-abiding citizen trying to defend himself, or you think you're going to be shot by some criminal that snuck in some firearm that the police weren't able to keep out. Just remember all the shootings that you've heard of in the news over the past. There was someone that had a gun in a place where guns were prohibited. How did that happen? How do you keep guns out of every place, out of every time? I don't know. Or even worse, there could be a terrorist attack. You know, something that I worry about when I go to events like this is, you know, we can't even defend ourselves. Or you could choke on one of those giant turkey leg bones, and turkey leg bones are not illegal. So that could be an accident. We just don't know when our last day is. So do your loved ones a favor and hire a lawyer to write your last will, living trust, tax-protected inheritance plan, durable power of attorney, medical power of attorney, directive to physicians, living will, and other documents that will help you get your affairs in order. Make sure that your business is in order. Make sure that you have minutes and operating agreement, and that your vice president or next in line knows exactly what to do to wrap up your business. I'm going to be talking about a general partnership. General partnership is when you don't have a formal partnership. You can have an informal partnership, and those partnerships are governed by the Texas Business Organizations Code. So even if you have nothing in writing, the law can have terms for what happens. If you don't have a will, then the state of Texas gets to say who gets your stuff when you pass away. And then your wishes may not be followed, especially if you have a second marriage or you have stepkids or step-grandkids. The beauty of a will is that you get to say what you want, and as long as it's legal, it's going to be legally enforced. And sometimes attorneys have to get involved if family members allege that something wrong happened. You might end up in court. If you don't want your family to end up in court arguing about a bunch of things, that's another reason to have a good written plan. People ask me all the time, well, can't I just write my own will on a scrap of paper in my own handwriting? And the answer is yes. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. But I don't know whether it's going to be legally enforceable or not, because the law requires you to use the correct words for writing a legally enforceable will. All you have to do is read the Texas Estates Code, and you might be able to figure that out. But even so, the way that you write it might be confusing to people. And so a lot of times people are in court not because they're alleging that you're crazy. They're just trying to figure out what you meant or what you want to happen. What were you thinking? And people are going to disagree about what you meant, because one person is going to want your property and another person's going to want the same property. So do the right thing. Make sure your affairs in order so that your loved ones don't have to rack up a bunch of legal fees fighting about what they think that you meant. So what may have been simple easy and fast for you to write might be very costly, expensive, frustrating, stressful to argue about in court later. Okay, I gotta end the show for now. This is Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, where I'm trying to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. Thanks. Have a good weekend.